can we agree that a piece of clothing can make you embody a certain persona, make you feel a certain way? Okay, we know that as kids, but we don't use it as adults. These are things that we can use as tools to bring us the confidence.
I appreciate you so much, and I just got a chance, of course, to read your book, and it was a wonderful adventure. Your voice, your storytelling, as I was sharing before, is so awesome. It was just such a fun book to read.
Thank you.
Plus, nugget on top of nugget on top of nugget. And, you know, we were talking a little bit before the show about how important it is for our health to develop a sense of self-awareness. And also confidence is a big part of what we do in our lives. So first, I want to ask you about confidence itself.
Yeah.
Why do you think confidence is such a big part of our livelihood?
I think we mistake confidence with, like, we want to feel good. So anything we want to start, I want the confidence. So what they're really saying is, I want to feel really good about myself before I start this, because right now I'm really scared. And so I think that that's what actually holds us back. And that was what I realized, is that we so focus on feeling good about ourselves before we start something that we end up getting stuck, and maybe we don't take that first step forward. So the thing that I try to say is, think about confidence as the byproduct. It's the end goal. So now, instead of focusing on you want that first, I want people to ask themselves right now, what do you want confidence in? Because that will help orient, that will help give someone that North Star. And you can hear me talk about the North Star a lot, but that is your goal. So if you say, I want confidence to start a YouTube channel, okay, great. Now, the great news is you can actually start a YouTube channel and still feel badly about yourself and still not know what you're doing. But what the point is that every day you can show up, you can try something new, and you can learn from it, so that eventually maybe you have a YouTube channel. And then once you have the YouTube channel, you keep doing it until you start to get good at it. Once you start to get good at it, that's the competence part. Then once you're competent, think about it. When you walk into the gym the first day, you're freaking scared. But after a year, you know how to pick up those weights, you know how to do the moves. So you walk into the gym, even just walking into the gym, you have more confidence. But that comes from knowing, understanding, learning, making mistakes, growing, adapting, and then the confidence is the end part. So I think the best thing that ever happened to me was realizing, oh, stop focusing on confidence. You just want to feel good about yourself. But what I did, and what I wrote about in the books, why I titled it Radical Confidence, because that really does mean I put one foot in front of the other, even when I'm scared, even when I don't know what I'm doing, even when I'm actually inadequate. It's not like, oh, but Lisa, you're just putting yourself down. No, I'm actually inadequate to doing this thing. But you know what? I'm not going to let that stop me. I'm going to learn. And then you come up with a blueprint, a step-by-step guide on how you're going to get there. Because I don't know about your audience and I don't know about you, but for me, that voice in my head can be crippling. The negative voice that's telling me, you're no good, Lisa. You don't know what you're doing. Imposter syndrome alert. You're not as good as Tom. All of these thoughts are very real. And so do I let that negative voice hold me back, or do I keep going? And the radical confidence is I keep going and I figure it out along the way.
Yes. Oh, it's so powerful. And it's so logical too. That's the thing. We tend to have this, like, I'm going to have the confidence and then do the thing. And the secret is the opposite. You know, you develop the confidence by doing the thing, right? But this doesn't necessarily mean you haphazardly rush into things. Right. This is why I love your approach as well, because it's just like, what can you do to put yourself in position to increase the odds of good things happening? Yeah. But even still, and I don't think a lot of people realize this, challenges are going to come up, stuff that you don't expect. You're going to have problems. You're going to have failures. But each and every one of these steps is going to help to build that confidence.
Yeah, we all so worry about failure, right? Like, what does it mean about us? Someone else doesn't fail, so now maybe I'm a failure. And this is the thing I'm really trying to drum into. I think everything stems from how we think about things. And so if you think that failing means you're a failure, you're going to feel worse about yourself. You're not going to try again. But if you just say, failing actually means that I care enough about my life to give it a shot. Now, when you fail, you're not going to feel that emotional dent that now it's a negative thing on you. You're going to be like, oh, I really care about my life, and that's why I did it. And so hopefully the idea is that that mindset, that way of thinking is now helping you get back up so you can go again and try again. And so that is one thing of just how do we see failure is going to be imperative. So one of the chapters in the book is when the hits the fan, wear goggles. And the whole point of that chapter is we so worry, oh my God, is going to hit the fan? Meaning, are we going to mess up? Is failure about to happen? And we so worry about it that that's what we end up focusing on. And we spend so much time and energy focused on, oh my God, I hope we don't fail. Now, the beautiful thing is that enlightened me was I looked at every successful person on the planet and was like, oh, they've all failed. Great. So now maybe that means it's a stepping stone in the right direction. And so now when that happens again, you don't think of it as being part of who you are. You think of it as being part of the process. And now if you can think of it as being part of the process, you're not spending a damn minute or energy worrying about it. What you're doing is you're thinking about, if it does, what am I going to do? How am I going to show up? Am I going to let this, bring me to my knees and stay there? Or am I going to get back up? That's the wearing the goggles part. It's how do I clean it up when it happens? And now my time and energy is actually focused on getting back up instead of worrying about falling down.
Yes, yes. Let's get to this part, but we got to step back first because I want people to get to a place where they're even taking the action in the first place. And you really help to articulate that because when we start off and we make the excuse that I'm not confident enough, I'm not good enough. We've got all of these reasons. Well, what we justify as reasons, which there are reasons sometimes, but most of the time we limit ourselves and our capacity and our capabilities and our accomplishments because we've got excuses on demand, right? We've got all these on-demand videos today and, but we've got these on-demand excuses. And just to share an example really quickly, my entire life, up until the age of 17 when I left for college.
3 years ago?
I'm a baby.
You look so young. I'm sorry. I was just saying before the camera rolled.
So, I grew up in an environment where it was very volatile, violence, drug abuse, the whole thing. This was a daily exposure for me. And so constantly being in a position where I had to struggle, once I got diagnosed with a so-called incurable spinal condition, it gave me a permission slip to not struggle anymore. And now it became my excuse as to why I can't do anything. There were literally hundreds of thousands of things that I could actually do. But because of that permission slip, I used it as my excuse to do nothing.
Yeah.
So let's talk about our excuses and how to find a way past it.
I love this because here's the thing with excuses. To your point, most of the time they're real. I wouldn't say a lot of the time. They're actually real. You have a damaged spine. It's like, well, you can't do all of these things. And that's a serious thing, right? So same thing with my gut. I've had massive health issues. And every time something came up, I could use the reason that it was my gut. And I felt very validated in that reason. Now, here's the thing. I think the thing that I always go to is, does that serve you? Like, what do you want in life? What is that goal? I even said earlier, what is your North Star? If you say your North Star is, for instance, Shawn, you want to change the face of health. And you want to empower people that no matter what health condition they're under, they can come through it with empowerment, right? Let's just say that's your goal. Okay, now you've got your spine issue. You can say to yourself, well, you can't get up out of bed. Remember, you got a spine issue. Now, that's very valid, but does that serve you in your goal? Yes or no? If the answer is no, okay, cool. Are you okay with that? Because here's the thing, it's your life. It is your life. The only thing that I try to empower you to do is take off your own blinders. Because we put those blinders to self-soothe, to make ourselves feel better about ourselves. And so I get it. Like for me, I don't beat myself up over the tactics I use to self-soothe. I just call myself on it. So I don't beat myself up for doing it. I just make sure I don't stay there because I know it doesn't serve the goal and the life I want. I spent 8 years, Shawn, as a stay-at-home wife, supporting my husband, putting clothes out for him, cooking for him, and I hated it. I hated it every day. It was not the life I wanted. It was not the dream I had. I wasn't enjoying it. It wasn't the life I wanted. But every day I felt like I needed the confidence to speak up and tell my husband I wasn't happy. Now, every time I went to do that, every time I thought I should, I was self-soothing. Now, the thing that I used was gratitude. Gratitude can be beautiful. right? It's like, oh my God, I've got a bad back, but at least you can walk, right? It's like we use the gratitude as a way to reorient maybe the negative feeling that we have to orient ourselves to maybe thinking positively. It's amazing. The problem is what I did, Shawn, is year 1, year 2, year 3, I was saying, you know what, I'm not really happy, but I'm really grateful to having a husband that loves me, a roof over my head. By year 4, year 5, year 6, year 7, year 8, and I was utterly miserable, that gratitude piece was keeping me exactly where I was. Because every time I realized I was unhappy, every time I was like, well, do you actually need the confidence, Lisa, to speak up, or do you just need to speak up? I literally used the gratitude to hold me back. And it was like, well, how ungrateful are you, Lisa? How ungrateful are you that you want more when you've got a roof over your head, that you want more when you have a husband that loves you? And that whole thing made me realize that I wanted to feel great. I wanted to have the confidence to speak up, to say that I wasn't happy, to address that with my husband, to move forward. And we use techniques like excuses, like gratitude, to hold us in the space that is comfortable for the time being, but what I call in the book, the freaking velvet handcuffs. It's like they're velvet, they're lovely, but they're still handcuffs. And so how do we shake ourselves awake? How do we start to realize what is that life that we want? How do we move towards it? I think it starts with identifying the goal, and then literally writing down, why are you not there yet? Because by writing that down, this is the no judgment zone. You can hear me say that a lot as well. The no judgment zone, write down why you're not there yet. And once you've written it, now you want to put on your other hat, which is the, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, the excuse terminator. Let's just say that. You want to do the excuse.
I was going to kill it.
There you go. And what you do is you take one thing at a time and you say, why am I not there yet? And then you start to identify, is that an excuse? Or is that a valid reason, or is it an excuse? Now, the idea is you're just doing this exercise to get to the results that you're trying to find in order to get to the life you want. So you can con yourself and trick yourself, but the thing is you're only tricking yourself. So as you do this exercise, the whole point is just to be honest with yourself. And what it will start to reveal is eventually the game that Tom and I play called No BS, What Would It Actually Take? So, for instance, people will use the excuse, I don't have the money, I don't have the time, I don't have the confidence. It's like, all right, let's actually write out what that would look like. So let's just stay on the YouTube train for the second, because we were talking about YouTube earlier. I say I want to start a YouTube channel. Am I there yet? No. Why not? Because I don't have the money, I don't have the time, I don't have the resources, right? You can write all these things down. And then next to it, you can say, is that actually true or not? By playing the no bullshit, what would it take? You write down also, what would it take to actually start a YouTube channel? Because your perception may be, you need a team, you need 3 hires, you need the professional cameras. So if you're thinking like that, you can see why. Oh, I don't have the money. Yeah, maybe that's real. I don't have, the resources. Oh, yeah, see, you can convince yourself. But now here's what I will propose. No bullshit. What would it actually take to start a YouTube channel? Oh, you want cameras? Where do you live? What neighborhood do you live in? Do you live in a 1-bedroom apartment? Well, you could, no BS, in order to start a YouTube channel, you could just grab your iPhone. So there's that. But let's say someone even says, I can't afford an iPhone, Lisa. All right. Well, look, I'm going to go back to where do you live? How do you spend your money? Do you buy Starbucks once a week? Okay, well, maybe that's $2.50. If you save that $2.50, you didn't go to Starbucks for the next 10 years. Could you save money enough? Or if you live in a 1-bedroom apartment, what if you left that 1-bedroom apartment, you got a studio apartment that you rented with 3 other people? It sounds nightmarish, but that's the no BS. What would it take for me to be able to start a YouTube channel? I just said that I need money from an iPhone and that's why I'm not getting started. The no bullshit, actually you don't. You can change your lifestyle. That's what it's going to take. Right. It's going to take you to moving outside of where you live, maybe the neighborhood, the conditions that you're in. Maybe in order to start a YouTube channel and be as big as Shawn, you have to not go on vacation with your partner for 3 years because you have to put in the hours. Yeah. Okay, now you've just listed what it's actually going to take for you to start a YouTube channel. And now you can just ask yourself, is that the life I want? Like if you were to say to me, Lisa, you could start a YouTube channel, but you actually have to go and move out of your house. You have to go into a studio apartment, live with 3 people. I'll go, oh yeah, that's not a life I want. So I guess I'm not starting a YouTube channel. And now I've removed all excuses. I just say, oh, I've realized what it's going to take. I've said that I don't want to. And now that is no longer my goal. The problem lies is when we say we want something and then we use every reason to justify why we're not there yet.
Yeah. You just said it's gonna require some discomfort.
So
And
much
we are
discomfort.
so in our culture today, we're so about our comfort, and that's cool. You can have comfort. You can absolutely have comfort. But if you want to accomplish something beyond where you are right now, it's going to take you to do different things, and that's going to cause discomfort. But that's also where you develop more confidence.
Yeah.
And you start to lean into the discomfort. And before you know it, that discomfort becomes comfortable.
Yeah.
It's one of these crazy secrets that shouldn't be a secret. So powerful what you're saying. And, there's this really interesting thing, just even going through these very practical assessments. You said self-soothing, right? And you gave a great example of what that can look like for you in your life. We use so many different tactics to suppress that because my condition can, my excuse comes up and it's like, really, what would it really take? No BS. What would it really take? And if I want to feel better, if I want to be healthier than I was in this state where I'm overweight, where I'm in chronic pain, I can literally just, again, take out a piece of paper and a pen and write down, what would it take for me to feel better? Because my story, the big title of my movie at the time was, I'm unhelpable. There's nothing I could do. This is incurable. And I was lying to myself that there was nothing that I could do. And because that was a dominant narrative. But if I just get practical, which again, it's one of those things you nudge people to, like just zoom out a little bit, take a meta perspective, write down some things. What would it take? No BS. What would it take to feel better? Oh, drink water a couple times a day, which to be honest, I might have drank a glass of water. I know this sounds crazy. Like people have tied me. I'm synonymous with hydration today, but I might drink maybe a glass of water every couple of days.
Wow.
I was my blood was probably like 23% Hawaiian Punch. All right. Like I'm getting in all the liquid I can through this medium, and Kool-Aid, and I didn't have a lot of money. So I'd have Flavor Aid too. It's like the knockoff, which is really messed up. You got to be broke when you can't afford 20-cent packet of Kool-Aid. You getting the 10-cent pack of Flavor Aid. And so, drink water a few times a day, go for a walk around my neighborhood. I could still walk, but because I was in pain, and the pain would happen only when I stood up. But when I'm standing up, I could stand up for quite a while. But because of that, I gave myself permission, I used it as an excuse that I couldn't go for a walk around my block, a couple times a week. Focus on getting better sleep, whatever I can start to dissect and break down those excuses. And I'm so grateful you're pointing us to that.
Thank you. And then I would even get even more refined, because sometimes if I wrote down, like I'm going to drink, I'm going to go for a walk 3 times a week, when it actually happens, you've got a reason. Oh, well, I'm really busy, so how do you then stick to it? How do you, habit creation, how do you make sure? I'll just own up to who I am. So I'll go, oh, I'm the type of person that will have every intention of walking around the block 3 times a week. And I know myself, when it comes up, my business is more important. So I guarantee you, I'm going to find a reason that I have to spend more time on my business than that. But I know that in the long term, I need to take this walk, right? Because for my health. So to your point, I know that I want to feel better. So I know I need to take this walk. But in the real time, I know that I'm going to prioritize my business. Okay, great. I just know myself. There's no judgment involved. Yes. But by knowing thyself, now I can go, how do I make sure that my natural inclination doesn't steer me? Like, I don't judge myself for it. I just go, I know that this is about to happen. So what do I do to make sure it doesn't happen? So I go, okay, cool. Number 1, I know that I need to put it in my calendar. This can't just be like, oh, I'm going to have every great intention. No, I actually have to put it in my calendar. I know that's going to set me up for success. I also know I have to set an alarm in my phone to remind me about my calendar schedule. So I go, I don't judge myself. I just acknowledge who I am, what I'm trying to get to. I write all the truth out, like the messy crap that is Lisa Bilyeu on how I think and how I show up every day, because I'm 43. So if I don't know myself by now, right, and doing the work, it's like, you can con yourself to pretend, no, you're going to go for the walk 3 times a week. And it's like, for 43 years, Lisa, you know yourself. You know you're not going to do it. But I know why I'm doing it. Going back to my North Star. So I've already established my goal. I've established why I'm doing it. I know that it's good for me. And I know who I am. So now I go, well, you're not going to let that be as an excuse, Lisa. So you're going to combat it. So before I even start going on that walk, before I even commit to the 3 days a week, I'm going to sit there, come up with a game plan, be honest about who I am, and then figure out a way so that I don't use an excuse like, oh, my business needs me.
How dare you? How dare you? Like you are, this is literally the most important thing, which is knowing oneself, the ability to self-assess, to know who you are. Because what we tend to do is we act like we're somebody else suddenly, while the thing works for a couple of days, a couple of weeks, and then fizzles away. If we can really take the time to identify, who am I really? What are my habitual patterns? How do I keep showing up? Because we're trying to go to a new destination, being the same person. And that's the big problem, because we're trying to take our old self to the new party instead of identifying who am I really? What are my tendencies? And then start to create a game plan to address those things, to stack conditions in our favor. Why don't we do this?
Honestly, this is exactly what I say for New Year, because I get everyone has a motivation, because that's the thing. We can convince ourselves, Shawn. It's probably a great human trait of ours. It probably is. I haven't really thought too much about it in like history and why biologically we're like this. But, like we naturally turn to, okay, I'm really motivated, so I'm gonna do it. We convince ourselves, and then reality takes over. And so I just go, oh, reality takes over. I don't judge myself for it. I just go, I know motivation. I know it's like a muscle, right? You go to the gym, you work out a muscle, you get bigger, you get stronger. But guess what? If you don't keep working it, if you don't keep focusing on it, if you don't keep putting time and energy into it, it will atrophy. The same with motivation. It's like, I don't beat myself up. I understand that motivation has to be an approach. It has to be a consistency. It has to be, you have to give it the time and the energy, because you may feel that burst of motivation the first year in January. And so going back to how I came up with this idea, it really was, I just have a goal and I just want to get there. So by pulling the wool over our eyes, does it serve us? No. By putting blinders up, by tricking ourselves into thinking, no, I've got it this time, does it help us? No. So how often do we say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result? And so I'm just like, okay, I know where I want to go. It is all on me, because I'm definitely a take ownership type of person. So I called the subtitle of the book, The 10 No BS Lessons of Becoming the Hero of Your Own Life. Don't look outside yourself. I don't look to my husband to save me. I don't look for my parents or my friends or anyone to save me. I am the hero of my own life. And in order to be the hero of your own life, you have to be honest. You have to care about yourself, but you have to be transparent with yourself.
Yes. So you just dropped in an Einstein, was something that's attributed to Einstein. Even with these quotes today, it could have been, Shirley that said this, on Instagram 5 years ago. It's just like Einstein said, we don't know for sure. We weren't there, but it's okay. But this is attributed to Einstein. But, this definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. But there's another one that's attributed to him, that we cannot solve a problem from the same level of thinking that created the problem.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I like that.
If Einstein said it, it's fire.
It must have been Einstein and not Shirley.
Shout out to Shirley. But, it's so interesting because, again, this is why problems, I believe, are so difficult. We overcomplicate them because we have the same tunnel vision. There's one way to do this, versus like, I have this saying that, because when I was growing up, I had a coach who would say, where there's a will, there's a way. Yeah. But now I say, where there's a will, there's 10,000 ways. Ooh. There's so many possibilities, but we have to oftentimes, again, change our perspective and how we're looking at the thing, especially when we're in it. We tend to get tunnel vision and just keep hitting our head against the wall, because we're oftentimes bringing the same level of thinking to it, the same person, the same level of experience. And so, again, having these tools, and you just pointed us to something really powerful, which is, and this is one of the chapters. I love your chapter titles, by the way.
Thank you.
Life is not a fairy tale. Save yourself.
Yeah.
Because we are inundated. I watched the Disney movies. I remember I was sitting there, Little Mermaid, all the things when I was a kid. And we have this very fairy tale perspective about how things are going to get solved in our lives. Somebody's going to come along and save us. This happens for men and women. And in that moment, when I had always kind of been the victor in my life, I'd been the one in my family to kind of rise above circumstances, to graduate. I was the first person in my family to graduate from college.
Congratulations.
So being the victor, but suddenly I get this permission slip from a physician saying that you don't have to struggle anymore. Your life is too hard. Here's your permission slip. And for me to feel better, what I started to do was look for a different physician to save me, and I had this habitual question in my head all the time. Why me? And the other one was, why won't somebody help me? And I kept going to these different physicians, and they would give me the same diagnosis, and they'd give me another prescription. And they'd tell me bed rest, don't do anything. And as people keep telling me not to do anything, and they're the expert on my body apparently, if I do nothing, the worst thing you can do is to do nothing. Because not only will my spine is already atrophying, now all of me is beginning to atrophy. And so I kept looking for somebody to come along and to step in and save me. And I even, in the last instance, the last physician I went to see was recommended by a woman that I saw at the gym. And, she said that this guy, he's the best. He's the best. He's the best spine expert in the world and all this whole thing. And I went to see him, and I had such hopes that this guy is finally going to help me to get better. And, wah, wah, wah.
Yeah,
same story, same diagnosis. Here's another prescription. Sorry. And thankfully, it took 2 years, of this struggle and 4 different physicians, perspectives, diagnoses, for me to say, you know what? And I had this vision I conjured up that night of him sitting there with his family having dinner, and he's passing them potatoes and,
The doctor.
Yeah. I made it up in my head, most likely.
Yeah.
He might have been having dinner. I don't know. He might have been, playing video games. I don't know what he was doing. Right. But this vision was he was living his life and he wasn't thinking about me, and I'm here in pain and suffering. And so I decided in that moment that I have to take responsibility for my health. I've done nothing thus far except seek out somebody else to save me. I have to do something. And I instantly asked this simple question: what can I do to feel better? I changed that question. And so I want to ask you more about this because, again, I think that we carry this with us a lot, looking for somebody. And this isn't to say that wonderful people can't be coaches and supporters and motivators and all the things, but Jim Rohn said no one can do your push-ups for you. And part of this, one of the subtitles here is, I can admit I'm not fine.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so thank you firstly for sharing your story. That was one thing that me and you really connected over. And I think that when people go through struggles and they find someone that has a similar struggle, you really do feel that connection. So, thank you for sharing that. I think for me, and I think for a lot of women, we try to be strong. And so when asked, hey, how you doing? It's like, I'm fine. No, I'm fine. We sacrifice. And look, I'm not just saying women, but that's just, my perspective. I totally understand that men do this too, but it was just like, no, come pummel through it. As we were starting Quest was growing so quickly. It's Quest Nutrition. We grew at 57,000%. Which means that literally one day I'm shipping bars from my living room floor. The next day I'm shipping it from a garage. The next day I'm shipping it from a facility. And then within 2 years, I'm shipping out $80 million worth of inventory. I've got 40 employees underneath me in just my department alone. Now, to give context, right before we started Quest, I was a stay-at-home wife for 8 years. So I had no idea what I was doing. And so each day, because I didn't know what I was doing, I was showing up and just learning and just trying to stay above water. Now, as I'm trying to stay above water, I start to find I'm quite good at this. But as I'm finding that I'm quite good at this, I'm really burning myself out. I'm working 15, 16 hours a day, working on weekends, no vacations. It was so intense. And because I was getting so much praise and validation for how hard I was working, I didn't want anyone to know that my health was going to crap. Because it seemed like everyone around me could do it. My husband is a very strong man, so he can handle it. His business partners, they can all handle it. Well, Lisa, you're the only woman. Are you really going to speak up and say you're the one that's now having like some gut issues? That actually not sleeping well? No, you can't do that. So it was this dialogue that I had with myself about why I wasn't saying that there was something starting to be wrong with my body. And because of that, I was just ignoring all the signs. I literally was ignoring all the signs my body tried to tell me. Hey, your gut is starting to get bad. You're not taking care of yourself. You're not sleeping well. You're working too hard. And I just ignored it. Ignored it because my validation at that point was purely being fed by how hard am I working, because I didn't believe that I was good. So I had to put in the time and effort, right? So I felt if I put in less time and effort, I wouldn't be as good, which meant that would be detrimental to my self-esteem, my ego. I didn't want to feel badly about myself. So it's all my own doing. But I understand why so many of us would just answer with, I'm fine. Yeah. Because we don't want it to be a reflection of who we are, or maybe our identity of like, people are going to think I'm weak. So in that situation, that was why I think I was just completely ignoring it over and over again, and why I just kept responding with I'm fine, because I thought that's what I should be doing. And then what a surprise, you ignore your body long enough, you ignore red flags long enough, it will eventually just start whipping you in the face until you pay attention. Yeah. And that's what ended up happening with me. I was ignoring all the signs, and on what should have been the most magical day of my entire career, where we'd sold a portion of Quest, our dream had come true. In the really hard days of building Quest, when we had nothing, we would drive around Beverly Hills in a really old crappy Ford Focus where the steering wheel would shake because it had like a hole in the exhaust, and like so we and in those moments we would dream about, if Quest was successful, we're going to buy these houses. That kept us going. Flash forward, we sell a small portion, we finally get the house in Beverly Hills. And so on this day, there should have been the most celebratory, oh my God, we're finally here, we've finally done it. I grab a bottle of champagne, I take a swig, because that was like, yeah, I'm gonna like Dom Perignon, waterfall, like it was the dream. And that was the moment where the bubbles, the alcohol, whatever, like that, wrecked my gut. And the only way I can explain is it felt like my gut exploded. That's the best way I can explain it. On the very day, like you couldn't write this better. On the very day we were celebrating our dream of working that hard coming true. Like it was I'd worked that hard, it caused my gut to erupt, and on that day everything came crashing down. Now, going back to how we perceive things, I literally goes, that is the best thing that's ever happened to me. And it was on the best day, because you want to talk about literally like whether you believe in God or a spirituality or just a sign that says, hey, just in case you don't know, money doesn't buy happiness. And so it was a beautiful moment in hindsight. But that moment, for 6 months, I couldn't stand up for longer than 5 minutes at a time. My stomach, I couldn't wear a bra for months and months on end. My stomach had protruded so far out because I had SIBO, I had leaky gut. All in hindsight, I started to realize this. And I was just like in total, I mean, it was a struggle. And now you're catching me, 6 years later, I still have to phone restaurants to find out what oils they use. I still eat grass-fed meat. Like I'm still very, very conscious about what I put in my body because of that. But that's been the 6-year journey. And I know that was a really long story, but it all stemmed from me using the word fine to ignore the signs that my body was trying to show me.
No, this story is so wonderful, so important, because this is a big part of what we do. Even talking about hydration, I direct people to the number one indicator of what your body needs is your body. Yeah. Me telling you should drink or eat or whatever is still theoretical. Your body is the greatest feedback mechanism, the most intelligent in the entire universe, and you live there. But we're so disconnected, and for you at that time, it was because I'm fine, and you were so externally focused, and so your body's like sets off a little minor alarm in the background, then it sets off like a little bit louder alarm, then all of a sudden it's like a school fire drill, then the next thing you know, it's a whole the building is set ablaze.
Oh yeah, it's Titanic and I have no life raft.
I'm immediately picturing
Yeah,
Leo could
I
have got
could see
on,
your
you know,
face.
yeah.
You like paused for a second.
He could have got on there.
Yeah.
But also in this chapter, you say, I can rescue myself.
Yeah. So it's exactly the same mirror story to you. It's that I was looking outside of myself at this point because Quest was doing very well. I was like, I can afford the best doctors. Cool. Who are the best doctors in Beverly Hills? You know, and you go into their office and they got the wall with all the famous people and you're like, oh, they're going to fix me. Just give me a pill. What am I doing wrong? Because I get it, right? Human nature, instinctively, we want the easy route. I get it. I don't beat myself up. You do want the easy route. You want to heal quickly. You don't necessarily even want to know what's wrong. You're just like, give me a pill. I want to feel better so I can move on with my life. And so initially, I think that's exactly where I started. Same with you, right? Where you were going to the doctor and you're like, how can you fix me? And every time they were telling me something, I was still ignoring my body and the signs they were telling me. What they're suggesting doesn't feel right. So for instance, I had started to realize that the only way I could actually sustain food, because literally I would eat and then run to the restroom. I was 20 pounds lighter than I was now. I mean, my hair was falling out, my nails were, because I literally couldn't eat anything. The only thing I could actually keep down was beef or something really fatty. So coconut oil, like really fatty things. And it has to be cooked. So cook me a big bowl of fatty beef with coconut oil, it sat fine. It was one of the only things. And I go to this doctor and they're supposed to be one of the best. Literally, everyone's telling me, you got to go to him, he'll fix you. And so what he tells me is, oh, stop eating beef. It shows that you've got an allergy. So they do these allergy tests. Your shows that you're actually allergic to beef. So stop eating beef and eat raw vegetables. Now, in this moment, where I've been sick for like probably 6 months at this point, I already know, my body knows that raw vegetables is murder to my gut. But Shawn, what do you think I did when the doctor suggested it?
You did what he said.
I freaking did what he said. And what do you think happened?
A show, literally.
Yeah, like a week. It took me a week. My gut was in such disarray because that was the thing. It's not just, you don't just run to the restroom. I've got such chronic stomach cramps that I can barely breathe. That's how bad it gets.
Yes,
I have to stay lying down. So I had, for literally, it was like 6 days or something. I had to stay lying down. I couldn't get up. All I could drink was water. I had to take deep breaths and I had to try and slowly introduce the fatty beef back into my diet because it was the only thing that I could take. And in hindsight, I look back and I'm like, what the hell were you doing, Lisa? And so what I realized is, yeah, you were just not human. Like, don't beat yourself up. Yeah. You were human. You wanted a easy way out. We all do that, but now you realize there is no easy way out, and now you realize that you need to start listening to your body. You had an instinct that what the doctor was telling you wasn't going to sit well. So I have to rethink my approach, right? It's just like, okay, if the definition of insanity, like, just change what you're doing, right? Because otherwise you're going to have the same thing. Definition of insanity. So I just sat and I said, okay, I'm sitting here, let me just back up. I'm sitting here and I'm blaming the doctors originally. So I actually didn't kind of explain what had happened. So I was saying the doctors were giving me too many antibiotics and it had wrecked my gut lining. That was the narrative I was telling myself. That was the narrative other doctors were saying, like, oh yeah, you've taken too many antibiotics. It's wrecked your gut lining. And that was the story I was telling myself. And so after like 6 months, eating freaking raw vegetables, all of this stuff, I start going to, does this mindset serve me? Does the way I'm approaching it serve me? Yes or no? The answer is no. Okay, how do I rethink this? I have to rethink that. What if it's not the doctor's fault? Okay, what would that look like? Just what would that look like? I'm not trying to make myself feel badly. I'm just trying to say, what would that look like? All right, well, I'm blaming the doctors, but the truth is they didn't force feed me the antibiotics. I voluntarily swallowed them. I did that by myself. Okay, if I know I volunteered and I did that myself, they can't force me to. All right, but they're the expert. So you should be able to trust the expert, right, Lisa? And I start thinking back and I'm like, actually, you know what? At one point he did say to me, I probably shouldn't give you this many antibiotics. Now, not once did I ask why. Literally, he says this to me and I'm like, okay, thank you. I take the prescription. I still go get my antibiotics. So that's on me. I didn't ask why. I didn't look it up. With Google, there's no freaking excuse. I'm just going to say that out loud. Anyone that's using that as an excuse, you got Google, now stop that excuse. So I didn't Google it. I didn't say what are the knock-on effects for, taking antibiotics. I was actually asking my doctor, hey, I feel sick. Maybe you should give me antibiotics. So that was a very easy way of saying, okay, that's you took them. And now start to even backtrack even further. I was the one that had a very unhealthy relationship with food growing up. I started to realize I grew up with a mum that was borderline anorexic. I saw that growing up. So what did that teach me? Lisa, don't get fat. Your validation will be based on how you look. And so at 16, I gave up fat. I stopped eating fat because I heard fat makes you fat.
Right.
You might have heard that somewhere. So I stopped eating fat at the age of 16. At around 17, 18, I start hearing about carbs. So I start cutting out carbs. So now you catch me. I'm in my early 30s. I don't eat fat. I don't eat carbs. Well, what's going to happen? I'm starting to get sick because your immune, which I didn't understand, your immune system, 70% of your immune system's carried in your gut. So I was getting sick. I was taking antibiotics. I chose to not eat fat and carbs to replenish my gut. And so it just slowly got worse. So I know that was a really long story, but that's how I go, oh, Lisa, this is all your fault. Now, look, I use the word fault because that empowers me to take action. It makes it sting just enough to be like, I don't like that being my fault, so I'm going to change. But I want people at home to use whatever word propels them forward. I use the word fault, but people may want to use responsibility, ownership. Use whatever word is going to propel you forward, not word that may trigger you. But again, I like the word fault. So I go, oh, Lisa, this is all your fault. You told yourself, you chose not to eat fat. You chose to not eat carbs. You chose to ignore the doctors when they said they shouldn't give you that many antibiotics. You chose not to do the research and you chose to swallow it. Amazing. But the most empowering thing about all of this is if I was the one that got myself into it, you better believe I'm the one that's going to get myself out of it. And that was the most freeing thing I had ever thought of. And I was like, this is super freaking powerful. I'm not blaming myself and keeping myself stuck. I'm actually using this as a way of propelling myself forward. And now how do I embody it with encouragement and happy spirits? Because that's also the thing. I don't like doing things out of fear. So I started going, oh my God, this is my superpower. I'm my own hero.
Yes.
And so that actually is how, again, I know myself. I know that blaming myself may make me not do anything. So I know I need to cultivate and create language that is going to propel me forward. And so I sat there. What do I love? I freaking love superheroes. Wonder Woman's a badass. So I'm like, cool. I'm now going to be the hero of my own life.
Yes. Yes. Ah, so powerful. So powerful. Oh my gosh. One of the biggest things, and this is a game changer for us to realize when we're in pain, whether this is a relationship, whether this is physical, whether this is a business thing, that's when we'll often do just about anything to get out of that pain. Especially if it's a visceral physical pain, this is when we're more likely to outsource our bodies and our choices to other people. Yes. Right? Now, the work is, again, it's not necessarily, your fault for having the things presented to you, right, but it's your responsibility. It was your choice. It was your fault to take those things and to imbibe them. So part of the work is getting to a place where even in those moments of pain, you still have the ability to self-assess. Mm-hmm. You still have the ability to question things and not run for the exit. Yeah. Right? And again, we both know this intimately, and you just turned it all on its head, because when you take responsibility for your choices, suddenly you have 100% responsibility for the change that comes. Yeah. And the choices you make moving forward. But if we're wasting so much time pointing fingers and blaming, we're just giving our energy away. We're giving our power away. We're giving our opportunity to change away, and so that's the opposite of radical confidence,
exactly.
So
and now
so
you're not
powerful,
relying on someone else. That's also the key. You even just said it. The power thing is such a big deal. It's like with the fairy tales, growing up, especially as a woman, made to think, that you live in service for other people. really is about putting other people first and giving your power away and never trusting yourself. And so in my growth as going from a housewife to an entrepreneur, telling my husband I originally want 4 children and then deciding I don't want any, going from being very sick to taking ownership to being where I am today, all of that comes with a lot of focus, knowing where you want to go, holding yourself accountable, and just not looking outside yourself for results. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't turn to friends. I think asking for help is super important. Like, not thinking that you have to do it all yourself. Like, all of these things that we're told, like, oh, you got to suck it up and do it. Like, all of that, I think I have learned to train myself to get better at, because I don't instinctually ask for help. And then I used to ask for help too much, going back to basically the ownership part, right? I was asking, help save me. And now I'm saving myself and asking for people to help me on my journey as I save myself.
Yes. So powerful. So one of my favorite parts of the book, you said this term earlier, when you were working your behind off and getting that external validation. I think that validation in a way can act as like pseudo confidence, right? And you've got a chapter in the book. This is chapter 3. The title of the chapter is Validation is for Parking. Can you talk about this particular chapter and why it was important to talk about it?
Yeah, I think so much. It's, again, human nature. We all want to be proud of ourselves. And growing up, usually, at least for me, it was like, to be proud of myself, I would look to my parents to like, are they clapping for me? I would look to my teacher, am I getting good grades? So I kind of almost get why we all grow up looking outside of ourselves for other people to make ourselves feel good. Now, as a kid, it can actually be a way to boost your confidence, right? Where like if little Johnny's jumping in the pool and doing a dive, and little Johnny's looking at the dad or the mom, and he's scared, but he still does it, and the parents clapping. It's like, oh, okay, being confident, facing my fear is a good thing. So it comes twofold, right? It can be amazing, but also it can be detrimental. And so I think the detrimental piece is when we don't do anything or we don't feel good about ourselves unless we're getting the validation, unless we're getting the pats on the back. And the truth is, we're not always going to show up and do amazing things. So how do we keep moving forward when either the validation doesn't come? How do we cultivate our own self-validation so that we know as a tool when to use it to keep us going? And then who do you look to for that validation in the first place? And then how do you unwire that? So like, I would look to Tom, right? To like, as my business partner, as my husband, it's, kind of look to him to be like, oh, you're doing a great job, babe. You're, great business partner, you're a great wife, whatever. And then realize, hang on a minute, that is such a bad strategy in general, because what if my husband isn't feeling good one day? What if he's having a very bad day? Yeah, and I'm thinking he's gonna love this, and he comes in and he hates whatever. Am I gonna feel badly about it because he had a bad day? So now all of a sudden something I was proud of now actually gets completely turned on its head because someone else's experience of whatever they went through that day was bad. Even just take hangry, right? What if my husband's just hungry and he's in a bad mood? Am I going to let the fact that he's hungry take away the pride I have over something that I've just done? So I recognize it isn't a good strategy to make yourself feel better as you go on this journey of having the life you want. So I recognized it. And I'm like, okay, what are the actions that I do where I seek the validation? That's first thing. Who are the people you seek validation from? That's important as well. And then how do I come up with a strategy where I can bring this to myself? So let me take the book as a perfect example. Someone comes to me, literary agent, do you want to write a book? The very first words out of my mouth were, who would buy a book from me? The insecurity, right? The 14-year-old Lisa that doesn't feel good about herself. That was the first words that came out of my mouth. And in that moment, I was like, oh, bless, she's still there. Like, that's okay. But you cannot let this insecurity run your life or the decisions you make. But what are you really worried about? So let me just take some time and do some self-assessment. Why was that the first thing? It's like, well, what if you write a book, Lisa, and no one likes it? Oh, so what you're really worried about is that you're going to feel badly about yourself. You're going to think that if other people don't like your book, it's going to say something about you. All right, Again, no judgment, that's just the reality. So now I know that I'm about to potentially step in a pitfall, a trap. So I go, cool, I'm about to step in a trap. What can I do now to set myself up so that I can validate myself even if the book tanks, even if everyone hates the book? What am I going to do before that I even release the book? And so I just sat there and I said, okay, how can I validate myself through this process? All right, Lisa, you just said you don't think anyone's going to buy your book. You're so insecure. But you know what? You're going to write a book. So you can be proud of yourself that you were the person that first said, who the hell would buy a book from me? Once upon a time that would have stopped you, and you didn't let it stop you. You actually not only wrote a book, you finished a book. And it got published. All right, so I wrote that down. You've gone from being the person that thought, who the hell would buy a book from me, to all the way to you did it. That's validation number one. Number two, am I going to give it my all? Because you know, right, when you're like, I can't believe this didn't work. I spent all this time on it. It's like, did you really spend all that time on it? Or did you convince yourself that you I put my all into it, but you didn't really? You went out on Saturday nights. You gave yourself a 3-week vacation. You stopped work at 5 p.m. Like, is that really giving it your all? So I said, okay, what does giving it my all look like? And so I sat there and I wrote out, what does giving it my all look like? And I said, okay, if you do this, Lisa, and you do give it your all, by the end, again, this is all before I launch the book, guys. If I do that, if I gave it my all, if I put in this time, if I said no to going and hanging out over here, or if I did this, but still put self-care first, because that's still very important to me, so I can show up to write the book. But if I do all this before I launch the book, can I validate myself? And I said yes. So I put in, there's so many other things that I did, but you can see how I break something down. I don't judge myself for it, but I know the pitfall of us looking outside ourselves to feel good. And so I created a cheat sheet, if you will. And so now once I released the book, I just went through and I was like, Lisa, you damn better be proud of yourself. You got a D in English, Lisa, and you still wrote and published the book. Damn, you can be proud of that.
Awesome. So good. You know, I just realized just now that your book was really like an inception.
It was.
You know what I mean?
Total inception.
Like you put yourself inside of yourself and created this thing for everyone else, and you were doing the things in the process.
Yeah.
That's powerful. It's so powerful.
Thank
One of the
you.
cool things too about, you writing this book is that your vision was storytelling, creating movies and, being behind the camera. And what people don't really realize is that validation comes in the process itself. If it's not about that other thing, because most people, they weren't with you. They weren't with you in the room when you were doing all this work. And it's about the person you become in the process. The character, the skill set, the ability to communicate, your ideas, putting your words together and painting these pictures and expressing your unique style, and all of these things get fleshed out. Right? So it's about the person you become. And it's really interesting when you have the confidence just to take action. Again, even if you have fear, which I want you to talk about now, even if you have fear, still taking those steps, something really magical can happen.
Yeah, that's the radical confidence.
Yeah. Look, there's another thing too that you've done recently that I'm so surprised you just started doing because you're so good at it. Speaking.
Oh my God.
Like
I'm getting nervous just by you saying the word.
But, having the opportunity to write this book, for me, it's like a no-brainer because you're a great storyteller. You've got so much to share and you have a perspective about what's entertaining, and so it's just like obvious,
Right.
But for you, it's just like you literally the first thing you said when Tom presented the idea to you, the agent wants to do this book. You're like, who would buy a book from me?
Yeah.
Right? Insanity. It sounds like insanity, but it's a valid thing in your mind, right?
But also, sorry to stop you there, but why would I think I would be amazing at writing a book if I've never written a book before? Like, I don't say that as a bad thing. Yeah. I just go, oh, why would I have tremendous confidence in writing a book? I actually can be okay and secure in myself by saying, you have no idea how to write a book, Lisa. But that's okay because you're the kind of person that's going to figure it out.
Yeah. Yes. I love that. So, also just to throw this in there to parallel that is it's about the person you become. You'd already become the kind of person who has that mentality. and your life experience. And it's just putting it into this medium, right? The medium's new, but you are already remarkable, you know?
That's so sweet of you, but I'm always very real. And I go like, so to speaking, it was the thing that petrifies me the most. It's like, isn't it like speaking, death and taxes? It's
Right.
like, you know, the three things that people fear the most or whatever, public speaking. And I remember being, when we started building Impact Theory, so I was all behind the scenes, Tom was out front, he had his show, he was going on stage. And so when he was on stage, I would look up at him and be like, thank God it's him and not me. I'd be like, I'm never do that. Hell no. And so it wasn't something that I ever wanted to do. It wasn't something that ever excited me to do. And so when I started to get offers, I just kept saying no. And I was like, why the hell would I ever do that? And then I realized, going back to where we started, was like, what's your North Star? My North Star and goal was impacting people. And so I just sat there and said, oh, Lisa, you say you want to impact people, but people are approaching you to have these speaking gigs. To your point, I was like, oh, you'll be great. It's like, how do you know I'll be great? I may freeze. I don't know what I'm going to be like in front of 100, 1,000 people. I may freeze. So all this, like other people saying you'll be great, now just adds the pressure. Of like, well, I better be great. And you want to talk about fear. It's like putting fear on top of fear on top of fear, because I've already feared standing on stage. And now everyone expects me to be great because maybe they've seen content, maybe because it's Tom's wife. And so I just kept blanketly saying no out of the fear of embarrassing myself, of freezing on stage, or of like, I don't want this to reflect badly on Tom or our company, or what would this say about me? And so I got in my own head. Until eventually Tom just basically said, babe, you realize you're tricking yourself, going back to excuses. He's like, you say you want to impact people, but you're not living in alignment. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, if you want to impact people, you would get on stage because people want to hear from you. And I was like, damn, he's so, like, the relationship we have is we're always very honest with each other. So I took that and I sat down and I was like, okay, let me just really assess this. I said I want to impact people. That is my North Star. I get up every day for this. And yet I am saying no to speaking. Why am I saying no? Like what I just said, the shame, the embarrassment. And I was like, oh, that's the ego. Oh, I'm putting my ego first. So now I just need to actually just ask myself, what is more important? My goal or my ego? Now, here's the great news. It's my life. So if I choose ego, that's my life. It's my choice. I have to live with that. So I think people need to ask those questions for themselves. What's more important? The way you're feeling, the uncomfortableness, like you said earlier, or the goal. But give yourself the grace to say, but this is my life, so I can choose based on the life that I want. So if I said, you know what, I just want to feel better about myself, and going on stage just brings crippling anxiety, and even though I want to create impact, I don't want to create impact as a disservice to how I feel about myself, cool. But that didn't sit well with me, Shawn. I just said, oh no, that doesn't sit well. I definitely am the kind of person that will create impact and make myself uncomfortable because I believe in my goal and my mission so much. So this means, Lisa, you need to get on stage. And so that started just a decision to say, to get on stage. And now I literally break out in the book. We all know fear can be very real. Fear can be crippling. And so by telling someone, no, just feel the fear and do it anyway in service of your goal, it doesn't work. And I realized that because I'm the type of person that kept saying no. And so I just needed a strategy and a blueprint to say, I know why I need to get on stage. I know why it's important. But I can't physically put one foot in front of the other because I'm so scared. Cool. You just need a blueprint now, Lisa. You just need a stepping stone that when you get up in the morning, what do you do in order so that you can get on stage? So that you can stop that voice in your head from tricking you that you shouldn't, that you want to feel better about yourself, so don't go on stage. And so it really became a layout of step one, like for me, it's wear my Wonder Woman necklace. And so I have this whole ritual that I do, like guys who do sports, or not even guys, but people that play sports, I hear that they do the whole ritual where they like put on the same smelly socks or whatever, because the same jock strap, exactly. I just go, these are things that we can use as tools to bring us the confidence. Think about a kid that puts on a cape. What do?
Yeah, and immediately just kind of starts flying around,
So can we agree that a piece of clothing can make you embody a certain persona?
Absolutely.
Make you feel a certain way? Okay, we know that as kids, but we don't use it as adults. In fact, we do. Some people like Beyonce with Sasha Fierce on stage. But like, that's what I mean, is that if you think about what are the things that I can use to encourage me to step up? If a kid has a cape, what is my cape? My cape is my Wonder Woman necklace that you'll see me wearing right now. This is my version of a cape. And so what I've done is every day I recognized I need a cape so I can step on stage. All right, what am I going to use? So I just found this necklace on Amazon. I understand the importance of repetition to create habit. So I said I need to create a habit so that when I put on this necklace, I feel like a superhero. So I'm going to repeat maybe for the next 30 days, every time I put on my Wonder Woman necklace, I'm going to repeat, you're a badass like Wonder Woman. And after the 30 days, hopefully when I look at myself in the mirror, I see a badass. And so you better believe these were little stepping stones that I did, and I break it down in my book, but that's how I ended up getting on stage. I wore Supergirl knickers. Because I knew, in my research, everyone that had ever done speaking gigs told me, you're going to go to the restroom a lot, Lisa, before you get on stage. Because the nerves, you're going to think you need to pee 20 times. And so I was like, oh, I've never been on stage, so I don't know. But this is a warning people have told me. And so now I know if I have to start peeing a lot, I'm going to get nervous. Because everyone's telling me it's a sign of nerves. So I need to now counteract it. So I need a plan. Everything comes to a plan, Shawn, everything. And so my plan was, you need something that when you keep going to the restroom, you remind yourself of what you're made of. So I'm going to buy Supergirl knickers. So I went on Amazon, I typed in superhero knickers, and Supergirl came up. I was like, oh yeah, I'll take some of those. And you better believe my very first TEDx talk, I'm wearing Supergirl knickers.
That's a fun fact. You're the first person to say knickers on the show.
Underwear for you Americans.
Yes.
But that is, thank you for giving me a but that, going back to your fear point, that is how I go, yes, I'm fearful. It is okay. Everyone listening right now, what is that fear you have? Give yourself the grace to just understand that, yes, you feel it. And now, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah. This is so important. It's so practical. You know, and I think we do this in our lives. We don't realize it, especially as children. We can be more cognizant seeing it in our children. You know, like my youngest son, his screensaver, he's 10 years old. His screensaver on his iPad is him in this Miles Morales Spider-Man costume. Yeah. And it was legit, like he looked like him. You know, it's so awesome. So much so that he's got himself on his iPad. He sees it every day. And when he put that on, you know, he's jumping around, he's flipping around the couch. And I would even tell him, like, if I did that when I was your age, I would have got my ass whooped. But go ahead. You know, like you're in your bag, you're in your vibe. But, you know, putting on this uniform and you being intentional about that, like you just kind of mentioned sports as well. You know, I remember, you know, it's so cool, you know, and you know this too, like you never know who's listening. Mm-hmm. And some of the greatest athletes to ever, you know, grace their particular sports, listen to this show. You know, shout out to 2-time Gold Glover, my guy Nick, if he's listening right now, playing for the Arizona Diamondbacks. But just understanding that a lot of these top athletes, if you actually get to hear them, they're terrified, especially going into big games. You know, some of the most like people you have fear watching them. They're in fear, you know, they're terrified going into that thing. It's just like, oftentimes you can't see it yourself. And then, you know, there's these stories, people like their routine is to throw up before, you know, getting to their sport. And so, but there's this practice of putting on that uniform and feeling this sense of like, the fear is there, but I'm ready for battle. I'm ready to go and execute and to do what I'm here to do. Again, we see that as adults, we're adults and we put on that uniform for that. There are people who are doing that in their day-to-day lives in their particular job. You know, they're suiting up and they're having that mentality when they put those clothes on. What if we're conscious about it like you were, you know, putting on your necklace or whatever part of your outfit, the knickers, you know, putting on
no
the
one
superhero.
sees them, so
right.
that's the great thing.
Yeah. That's so powerful.
And just being intentional, I think that's really the key. And anyone that's listening, it really comes down to individuality, and that's really the emphasis that I want to say as well. Is like, you guys listening, like, there's no way, Lisa, that's so childish. Cool, what's the thing for you? Like, that's really the point. It's like, what is that thing that you can go to, that you've cultivated, that can bring you confidence? Like, that's why I wrote the book Radical Confidence. You're never just automatically going to have it. So in moments where maybe you have to get up on stage, maybe you have to do a presentation, maybe it's your first day in a new job and you're doing a presentation in front of 5 people and you're petrified. Okay, well, in those moments, what are the things that you can turn to that are going to encourage you, that are going to give you that boost? And the sports thing, but I also mentioned Beyonce. Like, you literally hear about Beyonce. She calls it the alter ego, but what I really understand is it's a persona. She suits up in like these certain, rhinestone, onesie things that are just sexy as hell. And it's not like she wears that around the house, right? Around the house, she's Beyonce. It's like she's a wife, she's a mother, she's a friend, she's a daughter. But when she wants to be freaking badass and get on stage and rule that freaking stage and show everyone who's boss, she needs to suit up. So why do you think she's created a name? Because I'm sure she's cultivated that idea that as she puts on that rhinestone ones, like bodysuit or whatever she's doing, and she says, yeah, I'm freaking Sasha Fierce. Just even saying it, I feel more badass. But, like, lean into it, guys. Don't just accept that maybe you're someone that doesn't have confidence right now. Just, give yourself the grace to know where you are, say where you want to go, and then create a game plan in order for you to be able to get there every single day. So now today, maybe it starts with buying a Wonder Woman necklace, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe it starts with, braiding your hair, putting your hair in a ponytail, cutting your hair. Like, there's so many different things that people can try. And the one thing that I would suggest is where to get started is you just need to experiment. Yeah. I didn't know that Wonder Woman was going to end up being my thing. Mm-hmm. Like, if you had told me 20 years ago, I never would have believed you. At 16, I'd be like, Wonder Woman, that's for children, right? Because I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be cool, and I wasn't cool, and I didn't fit in. I got teased and bullied as a kid. So to fit in, I never would have had a Wonder Woman necklace on because I would have made fun of. So no matter where you are, no matter what age you are, the whole goal right now is to maybe just say, what are those things that I kind of just want to try? Like, what are those things that maybe you've wanted to make your heart sing? Yeah. Go and try it. Take an inventory of how it felt. This isn't for anyone else. This is just for you. I've chosen to share the fact that I wear Supergirl knickers when I need a confidence, right? Yeah. I didn't have to, but I chose to share it because I feel like that can help someone else. But remember, anyone at home listening, you don't have to share these things. These can be just for you to really get to know yourself, to really understand who you are, to understand what makes you tick. Because what makes you tick probably isn't going to be the same for me, right? It's not going to be the same for you. And so that's the exploration phase. Absolutely. It's going to be a little different, except I have Supergirl knickers on right now myself. I was actually going to say you may do. I think you're the type of person. So that's not, actually I don't. But so here's the thing, to bring all of this together, you just said, number one, experiment. Yeah. Right? Have the audacity, give yourself permission to experiment. Just like we give ourselves permission to have excuses, give yourself permission to experiment. And the other part is, which is something I know you did as well, is practice, preparation. Like, these are the things, Beyonce's part of that confidence is she's prepared. Mm-hmm. She's practicing in her life. And it's such a level of comfortability in that discomfort she's put herself through, that she's just there to tear it up in that moment, right? So, you sought out counsel from great speakers who we've got just in your life, not an accident, I don't think, and just to be able to ask questions, to practice, and to put yourself in position, because again, this doesn't mean the fear is not going to be there. Exactly. You do the thing, but it's practical. And this goes back, this is attributed to Benjamin Franklin. Again, don't know the guy. I'm sure it probably was smart. Still Shirley. Yeah, it might have been Big Shirley. But Benjamin Franklin said that if you fail to plan, then you're planning to fail. Exactly. So having a plan, putting this could be a 3-step plan or just a couple of things that become your itinerary. Mm-hmm. And again, making sure that those are consistent with your North Star, like while you're doing it.
And all of these things, again, it's the simplicity of your story is what's so remarkable, because there's so many of these different things we hear swirling around in our world, and they're cool things to say, but you made it all so very practical and like in real world, like this thing happened to me and this is what I did. And to look at your level of success and the things that you've accomplished, again, it's just another, for many of us, just it's very inspiring, but you passing that on to other people to be the hero of their own story.
Yeah, thank you. It's so important, because so many people think, oh, well, it's easy for you because you have confidence. And that's where I'm like, oh my God, you can be further from the truth. And so other people seeing me as confident, and that's why I've been, had maybe the success that I've had, is doing them a disservice. And one of my favorite quotes of all time is the Lisa Nichols quote, "Don't make me extraordinary to let yourself off the hook." I'm just going to say it again. It hits me every time I say it. Don't make me extraordinary to let yourself off the hook. And what she meant is people look up to her like she's so motivational, she's so incredible, that a lot of us were like, well, we can't be like her. She's extraordinary. I don't have that talent, so I'm not even going to try. Right? It's the excuse part. We let ourselves off the hook from even getting started. And so what I realized was, guys, it's a detriment to you guys if you think where I am today is because of confidence. It's because I got radical confidence. I felt insecure. I felt like a failure. I felt embarrassed. I felt shame. In fact, there's a story I literally share in the book where it's one thing that's happened to me where I was like, I'm either going to hold on to this and never tell a soul, and it's going to haunt my nightmares, or I have to share it as empowerment. And I decided to share it in my book as a way of like, guys, if I can talk about this story that is so embarrassing and so horrendous, if I can publicly talk about it, then that nothing that we've gone through in our past, no shame, no embarrassment, ever can dictate who we can become. And that if you can go through these moments and still build your confidence, if you can go through things like this and say, this doesn't define you, then you don't have to look up to me and make me extraordinary to let yourself off the hook, going back to Lisa Nichols' thing. So to me, I was like, I have to just be raw. I have to be honest. All the messiness that comes with everything that I talk about. Getting in front of the camera. People are like, oh my God, you've got a YouTube channel. Yes, but that started with me being petrified. That started with Tom badgering me for about 6 months to do a live Facebook video with him. 6 months. Then it took me another 3 months for him to convince me to do one episode for his channel, which I refused to do in front of people because I was so embarrassed. We sent the crew home. Wow. So that's why, but it's important to know, right, that I'm the person that was so embarrassed I sent my entire crew home because I didn't want anyone to see how bad I was in front of the camera, to now being someone that has my own show, that can come here, that can sit in front of you guys and not feel the nerves. It is not because I was born with confidence. And that's why it was so important for me to write the book, because it all comes back to tactics. How do you show up every day? How do you set yourself up for success? And how do you get out of your own way? Because for me, my insecurities and my emotions were getting in my way for 8 years. That left me profoundly unhappy, cooking and cleaning for my husband and doing something that didn't fulfill me.
Hey, if you like this video, make sure to check out this video right here.
Not only are we damaging our gut bacteria by eating horrible foods with high sugar and preservatives, emulsifiers, etc., we're also putting them in a dark place for over 24 hours where they don't know what night and day is, and they're dying off that way.